Welcome to the world united. Welcome to the world united.
And so at this point, what I'd like to do is ask some questions and also have you all have an opportunity to ask questions of each other. Because I found that to be a really great way for the interaction to go between the speakers. And Kylie, I love the I am enough, and I love that I am enough and I am worthy of love. What a wonderful mantra. Just amazing.
Thank you.
And do you work with kids, with young people?
I work with all ages, mainly sort of young people, predominantly women, but I do work with, pre-married, everyone really. So,
okay.
Yes.
Okay. It's such an important message, really. Especially when you think of the increasing of, say, bullying that happens. I don't know that it's increased. It's just a reporting of it. You know what I mean? It's
right.
And our awareness of it has been increasing, and have that message of I'm okay.
Yeah.
I'm okay how I am. And for kids and adults to respect differences and understand there's no one prototype of human. And you are a walking miracle. What an amazing story. And a radiant smile. I love it.
Oh, thank you.
As I said, are there things that you all would like to ask each other? Soraya, I liked where you were talking about the global shift. We have experienced such a difference over the past year, and yet I was sharing about how when the lockdowns first came in Europe, you really can't contain the human spirit. And I was so heartened by watching them in Italy, because in Italy, I don't know if you remember seeing the YouTube videos or not, but these people that lived with the narrow street between two large, tall apartment buildings were actually out on the balconies singing traditional songs back and forth one another and together. And it was like, how amazing that people adapted, and still found a way to come together and not be joyful, not just peaceful, but joyful.
Yeah, music's wonderful in that way, isn't it? I'm a singer myself and do a lot of mantra chanting and in groups, and the uplifting of the spirit when people join together in song is just such a joyful gift. It's wonderful.
It is. And for a while there, there was a symphony orchestra, I want to say in Boston, that had it had like a 100th anniversary performance that they had to cancel. They actually did it over YouTube. They coordinated over 100 symphony players, different instruments, all the instruments of the full orchestra, plus a choir. I have no idea how they did that over Zoom, but they did the presentation and it was outstanding. It was just outstanding,
Yeah, I've seen quite a few collaborations of music online during this time, and it's amazing how the human mind will find an ingenious way to connect regardless.
Yes. And that's what gives me hope. And I hear a message from all of you of, the positive things, talking about gratitude, Kylie, having that be foremost. And how can we nurture relationships, Sarah, envisioning a good outcome, right? Instead of playing over in our mind the old tapes and having conversations with people that aren't there, in rehearsal and projecting. So you all bring a positivity to that I deeply, deeply appreciate. Fear of death. I wanted to talk about that a bit, because my elder, Grandmother Parisha, and many Indigenous elders have a far different view they understand more the continuity of spirit. So death becomes just a shedding of the overcoat. And I once learned that our body actually contains every element of the earth mother. Everything's contained in our body from her. So it just goes back to her, but we go on forever. And when we fear that, and this time it's so short, and yet, in our culture anyway, I'll speak for my own culture, death is like, oh, I don't want to talk about it. We take our older people and we put them away somewhere instead of, nurturing them and allowing them, like in some Eastern cultures, the grandparents take care of the babies, and the household is integrated. So, like you say, the consciousness doesn't die. It's just the overcoat. And so it's
something I often reflect on, Deb, is when we go to sleep at night, we can't remember. It's a rehearsal for dying, isn't it? Because we go into nothingness, but we very happily do that.
Yeah.
Only because we believe we'll wake up in the morning.
Right. Right. Exactly. And I don't know if you've ever woken up like in the middle of the night and it feels like you've slammed back down in your bed when you've actually elevated, and lifted. And then it's like somewhere in the mind and the body it goes, oh my God, I'm off my mattress. Boom. Crazy experiences. So, yeah. I don't know. It's just been an amazing day, 2 days actually. And again, the synchronicity between you as speakers and your approach to things, none of you knew what the other was going to talk about. And yet you come in such a harmonious and supportive way of each other's ideas. Do you have any, like I said, do you have any questions of each other or something you'd like to say? I kind of like to see an interaction between the different speakers as well.
Thank you, girls. It was an honor to share the platform with you both. And I concur with what you said, Deb, about the harmony between us all. And I think it was really beautiful. I'd love to ask you, Sarah, I think it was Soraya, sorry, about trauma in the body. And obviously all of us to varying degrees have been through different traumas. And do you have any tips for people who have gone through trauma on, what we can do there?
Yeah, Kylie, thank you. That's such a great question too. And yes, I work somatically with groups and individually with clients. And the way I'll talk a little bit about the somatic work that I do, which is through TRE, but my trauma-informed yoga therapy sort of merges in with all of that. And, taking up what Sarah said there as well, talking about the neurological system, the nervous system, very much our training is about that. And talking about the Polyvagal Theory, which some of you may have heard of. So we can be in a state of absolute comfort and engagement. That's our engaged state. A trigger comes in and adrenaline and cortisol is released, and we go into what's commonly known as our fight and flight. But it's our activated, our activation of the nervous system is put on. Then hopefully we'll be able to calm down and come back into that beautiful, more parasympathetic, engaged area again. But what can happen if we're in ongoing trauma, which has been happening all over the world in the last couple of years, where that trauma has not abated? People have been in lockdown for long periods, and although we like to think, Sarah, that they've had lovely relationships, there are a lot of families that don't, and they're locked up with each other, and it's a little bit like a mini war going on in many of these flats and all over the world. So if that trauma continues on and we just keep getting triggered in fight and flight, we can then go on to be in fight and flight. That's still switched on, but then also we're switched into fold and freeze. So that freeze might be as simple as, I'm just disengaged. I'm just switched off. I know you're there talking to me, but I can't hear you. I can't engage with you anymore. Or it can be a huge fold and freeze where someone is literally, coming down into their fetal position and going into a whole physical fold and freeze. And, a trigger can come in, and an ex-serviceman might, a car will backfire. It's a classic one, isn't it? And he dives for the gutter and then goes completely still in the gutter trying to survive the attack. But that's happening to us all the time. And that trigger might just be our partner putting us down yet again, for instance, or it could be anything. That's just one example. This is a women's forum, and domestic violence has been accelerating as well during this time. So that as we are triggered and we react, whether that's anger or we get a fright and that's being locked into our body. That's locked into the musculature of our body, and our nervous system, our particularly our vagus nerve, is completely affected by that. And we can start to develop symptoms like irritable bowel syndrome, heart palpitations, inability to breathe, and panic attacks, because our diaphragm, which is also fed by the vagus nerve, is locked up. Or we might find our voice starts trembling because we're really afraid. Or our jaw locks up and we're grinding our teeth at night. This is the vagus nerve, the 10th cranial nerve, which feeds all these parts of the body. And once that tension is locked in and the vagus nerve is activated, we go into those locked up parts, which then create symptomology in the physiology. Very much sexual abuse, around the pelvis, and we hold, as women, so much trauma in this part of our body, but also men as well, not just women. So what can we do somatically to help release this? And the first thing is to become more body conscious, to start to develop our intuition, which is, definitely the work that I do as well. So we develop the intuitive ability to notice, someone just said that and I just felt my heart start pounding, or my guts lock up, or I can't breathe, or I've lost my voice again because I had to confront my boss about something. So what we often do, and what the body's first response to stress is, a tremor. And you would have noticed that, whether that's a little tremor in your throat when you're speaking, or teenagers, and I'll see if I can roll back and do this. If a teenager's in stress, their leg will go like this. Yeah? They don't want to be in that situation. They're stressed in that situation. Their nervous system is in a state of anxiety. So the body's tremoring to try and use up the adrenaline and cortisol so that they can stay there. And we probably all know the story of in nature. Nature has a beautiful way to just clear this somatic, this body-held tension. If a leopard is chasing a gazelle, for instance, that gazelle's going to run. And in that running, the adrenaline, the cortisol, and the stress hormones are used up. If it gets caught, it'll collapse and play dead and hope that the leopard goes away. Now, if the leopard does get frightened off, it'll stay collapsed until such a point as the body feels safe again, there's no one eating it. Then it'll tremor, it'll shake, get up, go back to grazing. No trauma held in the body. David Baselli developed TRE by noticing what was happening. He was living in Africa with the animals the grazing animals, and notice that within all mammals, this tremor reflex exists. So with TRE, it's a beautiful practice where we safely, calmly induce this tremoring in the body, and then we allow that tremor to happen and activate that consciously, so that parts of the body that have been locked up and held can release, let go, and release hormones that have been locked also into those parts of the body. It's quite fascinating. And then I add to that the practice of yoga nidra, which is, in my lineage, I lived in an ashram for my 20s. I donned orange robes and lived as a sannyasi for 8 years, studying yoga, meditation, and yogic philosophy. So I add yoga nidra to that as well. So I sort of I do the TRE work, and then I bring in yoga nidra, which is going through each part of the body, sensing, feeling, noticing, allowing, releasing. So that's one way that we can somatically work. And I do TRE online. I do it in groups here. I do it in groups online. It's fabulous. And once learned, the beauty of this is once learned, you don't have to stay with the teacher. You can incorporate, it's empowering. You can incorporate that into your own life then. And that combined with some of the beautiful yoga practices, which are all developed actually to release blockages in the prana and the nadis, which are similar to meridians, so that the flow of energy through this beautiful energetic physicality that we have is harmonized. And then, of course, the nervous system begins to harmonize as well. And then that flows out to our organs and systems. I hope that explains it well for you, Kylie. It was a quick rundown of a whole gamut of stuff.
Thank you.
I'm curious. Everyone's in Australia, somewhere in Australia, correct? So how have you as practitioners been practicing? Is it like you're continuing on Zoom, or are you able to do, client appointments? Or, I mean, what we see here, it seems pretty severe. And then, of course, knowing, Marianne and hearing of lockdowns and whatnot. So how have you been able to continue your work during this past year?
I've done a lot of mine on Zoom. However, I'm a credentialed minister, so I can go in for spiritual support to people struggling in their homes. So that's been great that I could do that. But a lot of my leading and training has been on Zoom.
If I'm fairly similar. I've been able to do most of my work on Zoom. Even been able to do a lot of the trauma work on Zoom, which has been fantastic because, often, it's good. People feel like they need to be held in trauma so that they can do the processing. And so, but to get people to feel that they can do that in their home environment has been a bit challenging, but quite successful. Mostly Zoom, but with the odd in-house seeing people when, particularly people who've been isolated or live alone or very vulnerable, and there's that feeling that they really do need to have the holding of the space, and bringing them into the clinic is important. And as long as we do it safely, we've been able to do it and not get COVID.
I live in Queensland, which is probably the freest part of Australia. So for me, it hasn't affected me. I live in the forest. That's our bamboo in the background. I live on a block of a hectare of land, which I've reforested with my husband, and one of my sons helped a lot as well. And I run a meditation centre here. So I have pretty much ignored all of that and continued on. People still come here for classes. I still do one-on-ones. I'm still running, physical groups. I don't, I allow anyone to come vaccinated or unvaccinated. I'm not vaccinated and don't intend to be. So that might change for me in the future. I also work on Zoom. So I'm sort of, doing everything here, and we're very lucky where I live at the moment, and I'm sure it's coming. We've only had a couple of short lockdowns here. So I feel so grateful.
Indeed. All right. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. And again, did you have anything you would like to do as, say, a summary, or if not, any additional questions? I would encourage you all to attend the closing if you can. I've put the link there in our chat for it. It'll be on track 1. And would you like to just each one of you do a quick summary of a last message?
Something I'd like to share, because Sarah was beautiful in her sharing. Thank you, Sarah, of talking about how important our relationships are with others. And of course, during this time, the blessing is, well, it could be a blessing, it could be a curse. You can see it in so many different ways, but I prefer a blessing, that we've got the internet and that we can connect with each other all over the world, despite being locked in spaces. And Sarah was really talking about that beautiful connection between people. When you were talking about when we were born, I just immediately saw the baby brought to the breast and suckling on the breast and connecting through that milk, which is also an energetic connection to the mother. And that's often our very first connection, which is so beautiful. But as we go on in life and we start to see, and we start to grow up and we see that we're not our mother, because initially we think we're everything, which of course is true, but then we have to move into a world as a separate, body, mind, until we realize we're everything again. So it's a bit of an interesting one, isn't it? But really, to be able to connect beautifully with the other, first we need to connect here with. First, there has to be love here in this heart. And I find when we learn to accept everything here, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and love it all, then that beautiful connection with others seems to flow so naturally and so beautifully. So perhaps Sarah can speak to that.
Oh. And I certainly really, yes, I am live. Yep. So I really resonate with what you say there, because there's definitely an aspect that if we can have loving kindness towards self, and we can accept ourselves, warts and all, and we can work through all, most of us really have trauma in our life. Most of us, and sometimes that trauma can be a really small thing, like, our mum left us out in the backyard for an extra hour and we didn't realise we were out there. And suddenly we felt abandoned when we were 2 years old. So trauma doesn't have to be some massive big thing that happens in our life. It often happens in our really formative years, where we have a sense of being abandoned or being betrayed in our life, and that will often really contribute to the development of the way that our ego and our sense of self develops. And often that's quite punitive towards self. And when we do that, it's really hard then for us to find the ability to have such loving connections with others. We often form really dysfunctional ways of making connections to self and other. So it really does start with self first. And when we get that right, then we have so much more capacity to reach more effectively to others and have amazing relationships. Kylie, would you like to add to that?
I love, what you both just said and concur 100%. I think when we know who we are, it's so much easier to love other people. And like I said in my talk, when you have that belief system, and that is, there's an element of brokenness in us all, and that affects the lens in how we see other people. So when we can find to come to peace with ourselves and find that love for ourselves, I think it's so much easier to see each other. Doesn't matter who or what they are, or what they believe, but one of you said the focus should be love, and I think we all are love and we all want to be loved. So I think the more we know that we are enough, that we are whole beings, it will help us in turn to love other people, and no matter what their opinions or whatever. So yes.
Fantastic. Thank you all so much. It has been such a privilege to be able to moderate you and learn from you and share. And you are all beautiful souls and lights. And thank you for now being part of my life.
And thank you, Deb. And can I just ask, what is that Zoom link you've put down there?
That's the link to track 1 for the closing. If you want to join the closing, it's in about 15 minutes. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, thank you so much. And thank you, Sarah. And thank you, Kylie. Lovely to meet you guys. Everyone's doing beautiful work.
Yes. You too.
Lovely to meet all of you too.
Yes, it's been an honour to share the platform with you all. Thank you. And thank you for leading so well, Deb.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you, Deb.
Take care.
See you over at the closing ceremony.
Indeed.
See you there. Bye.
Bye-bye.